Well, let's go right back to the beginning, because we recorded last week's podcast before we knew the team, and we were talking about the makeup of the team, Goody, weren't we? And especially specifically the makeup of the back row, because how the back row was going to get picked was interesting, and we didn't really know. And I thought Ollie Chesham, and we didn't even mention Cunningham South, and we were trying to work it out. I didn't see both the Currys playing with Ben Earl at 8, and as soon as that team was picked, we had a clear understanding of how England were going to play the game. And if we go straight into the game, it worked for them. The physicality, the breakdown, they managed the game with just 2 out-and-out jumpers in George Martin and Maro Itoje. Very simple game plan with the kick in, 2 or 3 phases, and then the aerial battle which they had. And they looked very good. Like, I was watching it, I was like, this is how England are going to win this game. It had that South Africa feel from the quarterfinal of the World Cup. It had, when they beat Ireland last year and a couple of years ago, that kind of same feeling was breakdown dominance, physicality in the tackle, and they unsettled Ireland. And it actually looked like it was a brilliant selection, but they just run out of puff. That's basically the game. That's what. So we'll go through all the details, Goody, but it was more the makeup. If we just go back to the beginning of the team, I was surprised to see both Curry boys in there and Ben Earl at 8.
It was brave from Steve, because it was so anti-Steve, but then it was also so Steve as well. Anti-Steve in the sense of he likes a big rangy 6 that's a line-out option and all that malarkey, the boring stuff, where he normally sort of goes towards from a selection point of view, but brave in a sense of, no, I'm just going to pick 3 out-and-out 7s. I know Ben Earl was in the 8 jersey, but, to go and disrupt the breakdown. And then I look at it and it's like, he's watched New Zealand do that to Ireland, and that's the blueprint. So he's basically trying to copy another team to stop Ireland from playing, as opposed to, maybe picking 2 of them and then a Ted Hill or a Cunningham South to start, where you've got someone else that can go around and give it a bit of oomph. So it's kind of brave, but then it was like, is it a selection just to try and stop Ireland? Which ultimately it turned out it was, because it was brilliant in the first half. And as Jim said, we rattled Ireland, forced them to make errors. They then realised that it was best off playing a little bit wider, because we were so condensed around the breakdown. And that when they were playing off 9 with some of their plays, we were getting up in their face and have line speed and winning not necessarily just winning the collisions, but winning some collisions and putting a bit of heat on them. And then they started going a little bit wider, playing off 10, putting a shape around the corner so that it sat down those first couple of defenders' line speed. Prendergast gets it out the back, then they go out the back again and get it to width. And then, Ireland then became very comfortable. And England kind of blew a gasket a bit. And ironically, here's me talking about fitness, when my fitness was probably horrific. But having lost Aled Walters, and, you go back to people like Felix Jones and Aled Walters, who were part of Steve's setup, didn't want to be part of the setup anymore. Aled Walters goes to Ireland, and we're comparing one of the top 4 teams in the world. Ireland are in the upper echelons of that, with South Africa, France and New Zealand as the top 4 teams in the world. And then the second tier, England are in it, but where are we in the second tier? In reality, I said last week that I thought Ireland would win by 15 points. And they found a way, by seeing what England were going to try and do, by blitzing the breakdown and bringing all that line speed, and then finding a solution as well and being more accurate with what they were trying to do, and the detail of their attack and the detail of how they're coached.
Rugby Pod fans, we need to give a massive shout out to AG1 for sponsoring today's video. The most important thing about drinking AG1 for me is how it makes me feel. I always drink it first thing in the morning, and it gives me energy, makes me feel focused. That's really important for when I'm editing all day, or if I'm prepping for a podcast. I need to feel like I've got the energy to get this done. AG1 is a daily health drink with over 70 vitamins, minerals and other ingredients, including gut-friendly bacteria, antioxidants, high-quality mushrooms and more. What's most impressive for me is how simple it is. You're told to take 1,000 different supplements to be the best version of you, whereas AG1 just makes it simple. Over 70 ingredients, 1 scoop, once a day for less than a cup of coffee. It means I don't have to go and buy 3 or 4 other supplements now, it's all just in one. Want to give it a shot? Subscribe now and get a free bottle of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first subscription. Just head to drinkag1.com/therugbypod to claim your offer now.
Which I think, look at this England team and people talk about the differences in caps, and yes, Dan Sheehan comes off the bench and has a huge impact, and they probably had more experience from that perspective, but it's more the coaching and the experience in the coaching team. And I keep saying it, this England coaching team lack a huge amount of experience, and that's mirrored with how the team perform for swathes of the game where the game gets away from us and the errors that have come from it. And you can pick out individual errors. Chandler Cunningham South with the hit on Hugo Keenan, which gives a penalty away. Then from the next line out, they put on the play where Chandler's too wide, and it's a great play where James Lowe comes out the shadows and goes through the hole. And other errors, the Caden Murley stuff. I thought Caden Murley played reasonably well, but there was two glaringly obvious errors that exposed his inexperience. And it was individual missed tackles as well. But I think we all sat there, we all expected Ireland to win. And the problem for England fans is you kind of get a bit of hope when you do some really good stuff. And there were some really good things happening in that first half. And then it just all falls apart reasonably quickly as well. And it's the hope that kills you, right? Because you think you're in it, you're going to compete, you might have a chance, and then same old. We fall apart. Steve talks to them at half time, bores them to sleep probably. And the second half we come out and make a load of errors, and against the top teams you're going to get absolutely punished, which Ireland did.
We had this chat during the autumn though, didn't we, around where England sit with the two tiers within the top 10.
Yeah.
And we were talking about where Scotland are and where Australia are compared to the likes of South Africa, New Zealand and Ireland and France. And chatting to mates about it, or chatting to my agent who looks after some of the players, he was a little bit down and a bit disappointed with the way in which England played in that second half. For me, I was like, I don't know what people expect. I don't know how you're looking at the two teams on paper, you're looking at the experience, you're looking at like Moneyball, you're looking at the value of a James Lowe versus a Caden Murley, or a Matt Hansen versus a Tommy Freeman, or vice versa, on the different wings. Like what you're seeing there is you're seeing a team like England who are sticking in there, they're trying their absolute hardest, they're being physical, and you're looking like a team like Ireland who have got the highest paid players, a load of experience in their team, out with the 10. We know, and we'll talk about Prendergast and Crowley working through who their 10 is. But down that list of players, actually chatting to JJ, my son, we were like top 10 best players in the world. Would you put any of England players in the top 10 best players in the world? Maybe Marrow, maybe.
It's hard positionally, isn't it? Right, it depends.
It is positionally. I mean, it's quite superficial. But like when you're looking at the French players, where you could put a load of them in there, the South African players, you put a load of them, and Ireland there'd be a load of players in there or thereabouts. Yeah. So if you go based on the wingers, for example, and it was great to see Matt Hansen back and James Lowe as well. They are two world class.
Yeah,
world class. Proven performers, and that's just the wingers that we're talking about. But that did have a big influence on the game. I thought James Lowe was exceptional. I thought Matt Hansen was brilliant as well.
How did
but
James
the experience of them playing.
How did James Lowe not get man of the match, just out of interest?
Well, it's the same as Scotland. Hugh Jones scores a hat-trick, so he gets man of the match, and it's just that they look at it like that. But I agree with you. I thought James Lowe was the man of the match. I don't think Matt Hansen was far away, because when they got the ball in hand, something happened. But the experience around that. So I'll just go back to my point, like chatting to my mates or chatting to my son on the top 10 players. Ireland are a better team. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. Like it's full stop, exclamation mark. They're better. England look good. Like they did, but for anyone looking, and the scoreline probably flattered England a little bit. I had Ireland 28, Scotland 20 before the I had Ireland 28, England 20 before the game. It didn't feel like that. It actually felt like it was, I know I was close to the mark, but it felt like the gulf was bigger.
Yeah.
But I think England are good. They're a good team. And the one at home against France this week is going to be the big one. And then obviously the Scotland the week after. But you look on paper at the two teams. That's what you have to look at. Yeah, you've got the experience of Steve and all of these things. So I understand the fans' frustrations. And Caden Murley makes a couple of big errors, like you say. I mean, the pressure cooker of being in an international game. You knew Ireland in that game, they were a bit scrappy in the first half. I know Sam Prendergast has been getting a little bit of shit. I thought he was actually really good, to be fair. Like, I thought he actually looked really good. Jack Crowley comes on, but similar to France when they played against Wales, it took them 20 minutes, France, to get into that game. Yeah. It took Ireland 40 minutes to get into the game. And once they started singing and England were fucked, they look like Ireland how you'd expect them to look with the team that they've got.
Yeah. I think the main problem is it's the same old story, right? And it is the hope that kills you. So we know we've got patches of games where we are on top of them, and we are being physical, and we are winning the battle, the collisions, the gain line, but we can't do it consistently for 80 minutes. And that's where all the questions are coming from. Like, you look at Ireland last year, they'd have won a Grand Slam had Marcus Smith not dropped the goal at Twickenham with the last play of the game to beat them, right? And we were 17 points to 8 down in that game last year at home. We then changed the way we played. It was like the lads were let out of a straitjacket, got to width, played, scored some good tries by trying to play with energy and tempo on top of Ireland. And we just didn't have that gear, didn't seem to have that gear to get to in the second half, and errors and a discipline. And, you know, people are, apparently Ben O'Keefe was out in Dublin on Saturday night just getting bought 3 points left, right and centre because he was...
On Friday night, you mean?
Well,
I'm joking.
No, I'm joking, but...
Which bit? So I've seen that pop up on my social medias. Why are people saying that Ben O'Keefe was wearing green?
I don't know.
You tell me.
I didn't actually... Watching it back, I'm like, you look at the Marrow one where he's pushed him, right? And you know this better than anyone, Jim. Marrow pushes every little incident he can to, you know... to the wire in terms of the legalities, right? You got to keep the gap at the line out. And people are like, he hardly touched him. But the fact that he's pushed a little bit and it's an overthrow and someone's seen the push, like, England fans are looking at that going, that's nothing, that's pathetic. But you know, Jim, it's that tiny little bit of nauseating stuff that, whether it had a major impact on, I think it was Conan not getting the line out, that one hand, but it's something that's clear and obvious, and referees and assistant referees are looking at Marrow, A, is his captain, but B, knowing his history of playing right on the edge. And so I think England fans were like, that's one that they kind of got away with. Talking about forward pass and stuff, and, you know, they didn't check the hit on Curry. Was it Caelan Doris? Bang Curry, I think. They didn't really get checked. I didn't have a problem with Ben O'Keefe, me old teeth.
Well, there was another one where I think Genji flew into a breakdown, absolutely monstered Ty Burn, and I just wanted to see it. I didn't. Well, obviously, there's a part of me that thought it was a high shot.
Yeah.
But I didn't get to see that either. I know people are coming talking about Ben O'Keefe. It was back and forth.
Yeah, being an English fan and an Englishman.
Are you? Are you an English fan?
I am, yeah. I want England to win. Not a fan of Steve, but I'll be honest. I want England to win, but I looked at the performance of Ben O'Keefe and I thought, I didn't have an issue with it, but England fans have gone a bit mad around him getting bought drinks left, right and centre on Saturday night in Dublin.
Do they know this or not? Is this
well, I had a missed call off someone at 1 o'clock in the morning on Saturday who's a good friend of mine. Who's a referee. The brace. He was like, wee. So we had some messages over the weekend. But listen, the game wasn't decided on Ben O'Keefe and his refereeing. I actually thought he was all right. But England fans or people have got a beef with it. But that's part and parcel of, you know, the game where you lose, you kind of look for reasons, and there was nothing glaringly obvious for me, but there were things that just added. Okay, so take an example in the first half, or I think it was the first half. He said anyone that runs in and does something when there was a bit of pushing and shoving, says, I'm not having it. Next one goes to the bin. So when Chandler Cunningham South takes out Hugo Keenan, watch James Lowe come in and blitz, try and blitz.
He's got shithousery.
Yeah,
James Lowe.
But then he doesn't follow. Ben O'Keefe doesn't follow through with it, right? And I'm not complaining and saying, we lost the game because of that. But that's what the sort of thing that England fans are having a little whinge about. But I mean, James Lowe was on fire. Whether it was winding people up, whether it was purely rugby based, running over people and around people and getting offloads away. He was brilliant. And you look at it, our defence was better. There's still a few system errors, but it boiled down to missed tackles a fair few times. So Alex Mitchell misses James Lowe in the first half that leads to Gibson Park's try. The second try, and you can talk about Freddie Stewart getting his ankles broken by Jameson Gibson Park. Second try, Bundy Aki, they've got to an edge and he's ran through Marcus Smith. But who's stopping Bundy Aki when he's running like that? Let's be honest. Name me a 10 in the world that's stopping him. Finn's a big if.
Finn.
But Finn, I still think he runs straight through Finn there, maybe. Third try was straight off the training field. It obviously pinpointed something, and James Lowe comes out of the shadows in between Chandler Cunningham South and the guard, and he was too wide, but he was looking at the attack opposite him, and it was a brilliant play. And then the fourth try is another missed tackle from Tommy Freeman, where the ball goes over the top from Sheehan to James Lowe, and then Sheehan gets about. How good was Sheehan off the bench? Like monster.
How happy was he?
Monster.
When he scored,
yeah.
Obviously. But yeah, he's a world-class player. We were speaking about last week. Insane talent.
But we should, not necessarily going hard on England. There are things that you've got to say about it, but Ireland, all the question marks, in fairness, and a lot of pressure was probably on their shoulders because of how, not negative their autumn was, but how semi-underwhelming their autumn campaign was, and the big question marks about the psyche of the team, and people called about the age of some of the players. But you got to tip your slipper to Ireland and how they played and how they performed in that second half, fixing the problems, finding the solutions around not being able to win the game line. So they moved the game plan to play wider off Prendergast, get to the edges, and reap rewards from it. And that was a couple of missed tackles on the edge that lead to tries, a brilliantly executed play off the line out that led to friend of the show, Ty Burns' try. And, they deserve all the plaudits. They're one of the top 3 teams in the world, aren't they? And now they've got to go and back it up and try and beat Scotland in Scotland, which normally isn't a problem. But this year, it could be tasty, James.
What did you think on the Sam Prendergast performance and then Crowley coming off the bench? Because I thought Crowley looked class when he came on.
The game fell into him slightly because of how it opened up. But who knows, that could have been him making it fall into his hands. I like them both. I really do. I was surprised but happy that Sam Prendergast was starting 10. And then I saw Jack come on at the weekend and I was happy for him as well. They 2 great kids, 2 brilliant players, and really exciting for Ireland, right? That you've got these 2 lads, these 2 kids to be able to choose from and play different games. Over the next 5-10 years, they're going to pick up injuries. So the fact that you've got 2 players of that quality to lean on, it looks like they like each other. It sounds like they like each other. They say they like each other.
We can all
Is
say
that a thing?
We can all say that.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, of course, but it's a bit of nip.
Yeah.
You're gonna get that because it's the main position for Ireland, and they're in a position now where we were talking before. Is it a Ross Byrne, Harry Byrne? Billy Burns, I did it last week, the Burns. I spoke about that last week. But now you've got none of them, and you've got Prendergast and you've got Jack Crowley to choose from. So it was tough for Prendergast. I don't want to sound like a broken record. You saw when Ollie Lawrence came down his channel and fucking beeline for him. Similar thing, right? It's like Bundyaki running at you. There ain't many people that are stopping him when he's running like that, but that's what's going to happen. People are going to be looking at him. I think he says he's 94 kgs and 6'4". Well, it's the same as that. Andrew Goode, it says you're 94 kgs on Wikipedia as well.
Yeah, Prendergast
you're
is
194
84
kgs. I know.
But
so don't
fair play to him. He stuck
but
the shoulder in, didn't he, to Lawrence?
He did,
and added
and he got up.
And got sat down.
And got up.
Yeah, and you rocked, aren't you? You know when that happens, you rocked and it hurts. But he didn't show pain. And on that Ollie Lawrence thing, I thought he was England's best player.
He was good.
He was unbelievable.
Really good.
When you're talking about
that's one thing. The 12-13 doesn't look right for me, for England. I don't know what it is. I ain't got a solution. Do you put a Freeman in there and then, I don't know, obviously Emmanuel Feo-Boso's injured, but the 12-13, I know Slade put a lovely kick through for Caden Mully. I'm not saying that it's Slade that needs to be dropped, but there, if we're saying Ollie Lawrence is unbelievable, but it just doesn't look right. I don't know. It didn't look right in the autumn. Didn't look amazing at the weekend. But they're lacking power. This is one thing that we said, Goody. You look at Ireland and the players that they've got to carry into traffic again and again and again. Robbie Henshaw, when he came on, looked very good as well. You've got Jamison Gibson-Park, who can carry ball from a scrum half's point of view, physically, I mean. And then you've got Porter. You've got Finlay Bealham, who I thought was good. We've mentioned Dan Sheehan constantly, and Ireland have still got some big carriers to come back. When you look at England or you look at the Premiership, who are you picking out of that? Tom Willis did well when he came on carrying. You could see he looked, this isn't meant to sound derogatory, busy.
Yeah.
What does busy mean? Like he wanted to carry, but it's similar to what we've spoken about with Scotland in the past with the next tier of teams. Look at Francis Power and we'll come on to them. My goodness me, the size of humans.
Oh, my days.
The All Blacks, South Africa, Australia have that now, and so do Ireland. England don't, Wales certainly don't, and Italy and Scotland are very similar when it comes to the size of athletes and the power in which they have. And I just think England fit that mould as well. Maro's not a powerful carrier. Genji tries hard, but he's got a scrummage to the cowshed and back, so you can't be reliant on that. Theo Dan, as we know, comes on as a decent carry and is looking for ball and wants to carry. Do you see what I mean? So we're clutching at straws when it comes to England and getting them over the gain line and give them a target if it's just Ollie Lawrence who can carry.
Yeah, I mean, one of the issues in that, and you mentioned Tom Willis, but Ben Earl starting at 8 was very quiet. We've not seen the best of him for, I think, quite some time now in an England jersey. There's obviously been some penalties that he's given away in previous games, but we're not seeing that real athleticism that we've seen previously. And I don't know whether that's been...
He's out of position.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to say. Is that a balance of having, playing out of position with 2 of the 7s as well? And does that make it then a negative team selection because you're picking effectively 3 7s in the back row just to try and disrupt Ireland, as opposed to saying, do you know what I'd pick? And it's an out there call. I'd pick Ted Hill. Every time I watch him play,
a few people are saying that.
He does.
Ahead of who? Ahead of who?
One of the Currys. And then you can argue even Tom Willis in for Ben Earl, and then say, Ben Earl, you're on the bench. Where's the old celebrations coming from? Get on there and bring some tempo and energy when he comes on. But you watch Ted Hill play, and no one would have seen him in an England jersey, but you watch him play at Bath, he has got every attribute that you need for a back rower. Quick, powerful, intelligent, good hands, good lines of running, can smash, hell of a jawline, I've said it before. But I think he's the full package, but we haven't seen him yet in an England shirt. So
do you not think, and maybe it's because you're so close to England, or we both are, there's no other team, maybe we don't know the squads and the players as well as we know the England players from watching the Premiership, but every single week we question selection, or you question selection. Ted Hill's never... Has he played for England?
I think he's got a couple of caps, James. So we've not seen anything
why
of him.
Are you at a point now, you're clutching at straws for a player that's got 2 caps?
I'm like, that's his ability. And you've got to be given an opportunity at some point. And I'm not saying...
But is the Six Nations that time to do that?
Well, we need to find a difference. We're talking about carrying, and you're talking about where are the carriers? Where are you? Let's be having you. Well, there's an option.
Well, I'll tell you something. Because it's France, Tom Willis will start.
Yeah.
Played in France.
Yeah. So you reckon he's going to
big.
drop Ben Earl for Tom Willis? Or is he going to drop one of the Currys and put Ben Earl?
I can't work out which one of the Currys played really well. It might have been Ben or Tom.
They both played well.
I know. Yeah, they both played well, but one of them was slightly better. It might have been Ben.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? No one knows. Only they know. I think Willis starts. I think Ben Earl gets moved. Yeah. To the bench. I think with Ben Earl, he's a class talent, by the way, but he's not an 8. So therefore, you're asking him to play like an 8. And when you don't have any other carriers of size of human, getting bored of saying that phrase, but if you ain't got an Emmanuel Molfo, or you've not got a Caelan Doris, a player that is running in traffic, which is then opening space for them short lines off 9 or the slightly wider runners in the channels, like a Ben Earl. That's where he's at his best, when you see him in open space. But if you're asking him to be running constantly into traffic as an 8, as you want your 8, Billy Vunipola, that style of player, Kieran Reid back in the day, Ardy Surveyor, Jasper Wiese, these style of 8, Harry Wilson for Australia, the Caelan Dorises of the world, that ain't in.
No.
And as you know, and as we know, that's what opens up the space for players like him. And this is where England are lacking that power carrier. And this is why you could argue for Chandler Cunningham South. I know he was poor off the bench. He made a few errors because he wanted to fucking monster Hugo Keenan, and he jumped out of the line for James Lowe to go through where Ireland scored that try. But at least he gives them a bit of power to get over the game line. So actually, I'm going to double down here. I'm going to guess the back row. I'm going to say Chandler Cunningham South, might be Ollie Chesham. I'm going to say Tom Curry at 7. I'm going to say Tom Willis at 8, because they need to do something different because it isn't working for whatever reason.
I also think it's the attacking framework and how the lack of experience in the coaching department. You said then, and look at the way Ireland shifted from trying to take us on off 9 close and we're losing that, to quickly shift into going, right, the fucking space is on the edge, lads. there's meters to be made out there, which then means that the defence is retreating. Instead of trying to win the gain line by running over people, we're going to try and run around you and get softer shoulders in the wider channels. So but
in the wider channels for Ireland, Goody, they've got them 2 world-class wingers in James Lowe, who not only is a running threat, who's got the kicking threat, and you've got Mac Hansen, who in traffic been able to step back, make something out of nothing. Yeah. And England don't have that. That's not their back 3 profile.
No,
it isn't, is it?
I understand. I think Caden Murley's and Freeman have got that ability in them, but we don't see it because we don't get the ball there and we don't test that. And it's like, if we don't win the gain line, we just go to a kick. And that was clearly a tactic in the first half. When you got Marrow out on the edge and Marcus Smith is putting kicks up to get to Marrow, and then saying there was another one early on in the first half where there's obviously a clear setup. I know, I think it was when Mac Hansen was off, but there was a clear setup when they went crossfield kick and it just goes into touch, where there's 2 forwards out there. And so the clear mentality was, break the barrier. Let's put a contestable kick, whether it's a crossfield or whatever. And they've manufactured it so they've got taller individuals in those outside channels to do that. So I want to see, and it did seem like the first thought was 1-phase, 2-phase kick and all sorts of kicks. So there was obviously the try we scored was one good example, but then there was probably 5 or 6 others where Slade's put one through, Marcus Smith has put a couple through, and it's just giving possession away. So we don't seem to have, I think, the confidence to try and get to an edge, which is ironically how we beat Ireland last year, by upping the tempo and basically saying, fuck it, we're going to have a dig, and getting it into the wider channels. And maybe that's a consequence of the personnel, but I think more so it's a mindset and a framework that they're coached by, to not try and find space on an edge or find a weaker shoulder by getting into the 15-metre channels and having a crack.
Pod.
Rugby pod.